because I didn't realize this either until a colleague told me after the meeting ended.
Yeah.
So they were doing their board dinner right afterwards.
Oh.
So they weren't in a rush because there was food that they had already made plans to stay.
Right. Oh, that makes sense.
So in terms of them not usually they try and do more of a hard stop in terms of like, okay, like we're gonna get to where we get to by 5 or by 5:15.
Well, that's good. And maybe we can reevaluate that.
Yeah.
My husband's really like, just cut that Friday out or Thursday, Friday out.
A couple of us, like, I was texting because I was waiting for Jeff, who's over in policy, because he had a presentation, but then we're on this today.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I was like, is this ever gonna end? And he was like, it's because they have dinner downstairs, so they're not in a hurry. And I was like,
makes so much more sense. Well, that's good. Then they didn't have those, yes, they just make the long hairs later.
yeah, but at least on a full step.
Yes. Which makes everything better. And sleepier.
Well, can I introduce myself to you?
Please do.
I was gonna say, because I know who you are. So I'm Ashley Rustin, so I work for Alpine School District.
Oh, yes, I know that name.
Yeah, so I work
Are
right
you in
across.
science?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I've heard so many great things about you. I know like I know you. It's the only good that you do.
Well, I'm trying, but I was like, we have a champion
Oh,
for our
yeah.
region now, for our area, whatever. Well, what is it called? Region? What do you guys call it?
Yeah,
District.
I don't know. I'm new at all this too. I'm learning with everybody else. Oh, that's right.
So, yeah, no, and well, I sit right across from Jody. Lindsay.
Oh,
and
you do?
She just sings her praises all the time.
I love her. She is one of my dear friends.
Hi.
Good morning.
Fun.
How are you?
It's her first year in this.
Where's Jenny?
It's so nice
Have you seen her?
get to know her and see what she can do.
She's really
Oh,
cool.
she
and I started teaching together.
Like she came in asking that board member as a
Okay.
so I don't know if
And she's not even one
I'll
of the
review
great
some
things.
of it.
I'm just gonna keep running away from her.
So.
Don't tell her I'm going after this.
Okay, good job.
I'm gonna head downstairs.
Take the science instructional.
Thank you.
Yeah, for
Hi,
Alpine
Lisa.
District as well.
Oh, what's your last name?
Covert.
Lisa Covert. Okay. Well, it's nice to meet
Good
you. How many
morning.
instructional coaches do we have?
In
Science.
Lisa.
Oh. It's me.
Which is a huge step because for the last, my first 4 years, we've had anyone. Last year, Lisa came in part-time and we had another teacher, Anna Harmon, who's a high junior.
Okay.
But they were part-time last year. And then Anna wanted to go back full-time to the classroom. So then Lisa, I can do this full-time.
Wow. So which schools were you at before?
I taught Orem Junior.
At Orem Junior, okay. With,
When
who was the,
Joe was the
was Joe Jensen?
Yeah, he hired me. I think I came like for his second year.
We did our administrative internships together. He's just like the best guy.
Seriously, that was like, it was just like fate that I ended up there.
This is Ashley. You need me to spit over?
Wow. Rock and roll.
Yeah.
He was like,
Yeah.
he took that school like the highest performance ever in school.
No.
in the whole state.
It was
awesome.
It was amazing to work with him. Like it was just, I just remember interviewing with them. I went to SUU and I had like no desire to teach in Marshall County. But my professor, she knew Glenn, one of the science teachers there really well. And so he was like, hey, they're looking for interns.
No, that's in the boardroom.
Will you interview with them? I'm like, where are they? It's like, board. I'm like, oh. Okay.
Exactly what happened to me.
But yeah, once I interviewed, I was like, yep, I really want that job. I hope that I get that job.
I'm so glad you did.
So Glenn and Joe, it was just amazing. Like it was my first time Skype.
How are you?
This was back in like 2009, 2010. And I was like, I don't really know how to use Skype.
But we're gonna go for
Why don't you
it.
teach me? Yeah.
That's so cool.
And I've been, I started at Mountain View and then I switched to Frontier Middle.
Oh, wow. Okay. So distance. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Love both of those schools too. I'm not as familiar with the, here, but I taught with David Smith also, who is at Mountain View now.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, So now you're not there at all, you don't even have time here.
Yeah,
How's
I'm
that?
just working, it's different.
Yes.
It's weird to not have my class.
So you were at Oak Canyon?
Yes.
Say David and Jody, that's the Oak Canyon connection.
I'm telling you, those are the best days of my career. I mean, I love all the other stuff too,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
had.
So what did you teach?
English. Yeah, it was just, it was a riot.
I bet.
Such a healthy culture there, and people who just cared about each other and had each other's backs and protected instructional time. And we had a dance teacher come in that was like sending out emails almost every day. Sorry, the dance kids are coming late. We got out late. And I went to her and I said, I'm telling you this is fun. I'm telling you this because I want you to have a long, wonderful career here. At this school, instructional time is like 15 minutes. Like you can't mess with it. You can do anything else. Ask us how
Thank
to
you
set up
for your
all this
email.
morning.
So I'm actually heading up to visit some of the LEAs up in the
But it was good.
right before Thanksgiving.
With Darren and
kind of
Doug.
sent me
Yeah.
over.
I'm trying to think who are the old science teachers.
Not yet, but I'm going to.
They are, yeah, they're wonderful.
It's
Well,
on my
they're so great. I love anytime
Like,
I go there.
twice a year.
So welcome.
My daughters and I go out and we just shop along Main Street down. Because there's a cute boutique called
So cute.
Rocky Mountain Resort.
All of them boutiques are so
I know, they're just darling. So, you know, it takes a couple of hours and there's a little place on the corner where they have called the Bun
Yeah,
Masters.
Doug was one of the writers.
And they
loved
just
him. We were on the East Creeks with him.
Just stopping for lunch. Are you from down?
I live in Davistown.
Yeah, what to eat, you know, and
Well, I live in South Salt Lake and we just drive out.
Well, I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Was it so fun? It was fun to learn
yeah. After that long meeting,
I'm not a party person. I'm not anti-Janet.
Party.
I really am. So.
Will do. Good. Morning.
yeah, and I'm.
Why? Just bring it on.
So, this was and so anyways, they said to me, you need to go and and then it's being growing into a great mass. It's back there. I have scar tissue. It's the whole area and it's a surgeon out of the country, so it's fun. It's very whatever. Anyways, they're like, you need to take care of your nose. And I was like, scheduled in August, and I got to over, and you know, it's not like I'm gonna sit up for like, I don't know, so I will. Yeah.
Can you come to this side?
Yeah,
This side,
I
I'm
can
gonna
see. And so then I just got started. And my doctor's there. So I went in, so.
So.
I hear you.
they went up the back. Oh my gosh. Like, good. Of course you do. So I just did not. Visualize what you're doing. How are you? I'm well. How are you? I'm good, thank you. Oh.
Too great. I saw that, right?
Absolutely, she was great, not to be
I
good.
still remember that.
Oh, sorry. It's you.
Maybe it was just.
Where's my
Where's the makeup in on her?
I guess.
That's very nice.
Did you and Laura get this right? Is that why you got a cookie? I'm just kidding.
What do I need to do? Tell us later.
Oh, okay.
Not for public.
Oh, sorry.
She knows how to have it.
I have.
How are you? Yes, I was like, oh goodness.
You guys have fun?
You missed a wild and rowdy bunch.
Was it?
I know, right?
Sorry, I'm just.
It was
I
actually
would
quite
still
fun.
be like.
Oh, good.
And I told Patty, I'm the anti-Janet,
That
so
would be my
I do not party. I'm sort of a,
When I get there, I like it, but I
yeah.
never.
And I'm very,
Right.
and I'm very,
Too much of a fake extrovert.
she's like, yeah, she'll be
Extra introvert.
Jenny and I decided we have this personality disorder.
I've just always been like, I've never liked big groups. I just, but I like. I don't. We love parties. We don't.
And I'm kind of one that, I'll go, but I want to.
Yeah. Even though we meet until I get.
Yeah.
So I can never. Yeah. So, yeah.
And
That's why you're. Oh, you will enjoy yourself. Oh, we'll get something done. I'll make that happen. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I bet you're hilarious. I've had friends like you before. I know.
no. Yeah. Yeah, we would. I was trying and I have. Yeah, we'll just pull it. And that's fine, yeah, yeah, I just, there's stuff that needs, and then I haven't looked if those are adequate or more or whatever. And we'll, yeah, we've got. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
You don't have to be quiet for 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Talk much just that. Oh, at least she's gonna be here, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch her with Scott. Scott won't be there.
Oh, there you go. I was saying as we walk in the board. Oh, they're all off. Yeah, it just like okay, well, that's what my clock said. Sid came in to talk to me and I was like, oh no, no, I've been here like 30 minutes early.
Good for you.
I got here at 8:20. Oh, look at you.
I'm not getting my computer last night. And it was the weirdest thing. I could not get on the internet last night.
Oh no.
I usually have problems there. Just kidding. I was gonna have a patient.
Good, how are you?
I know. Work.
You know what? I go like this. Goes away. Besides, because I'm you wouldn't even know.
So, we will call our meeting. Yo.
We're trying to start.
It's 9 a.m. and if I don't start right now, we will be recorded as starting tonight.
That is not the right Janet way. That's not the Janet way.
So, so we want to welcome all of you. Thank you for taking your time to join us for our meeting today. We would like to just begin by introducing ourselves, and we'll introduce those at the table. Then we'll go around the room and ask you if you would please introduce yourselves and let us know if there's any particular item on the agenda that you would be interested in giving input or commenting on, and we'll try to remember to recognize you when we come to that in our agenda. So I'm Janet Cannon, a member of the State Board, and I'm chairing the meeting this morning. And we'll go.
I'm Elisa Ellis. I'm a member of the State Board of Education also.
I'm Sherry Rubin and I support this committee.
Jenny Gravitt, State Board Member for District 4.
Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement.
And Carol Weir, another board member, has just excused herself from the meeting.
Linda Hanks, I am a board member in Duab School District and am representing Utah School Boards Association.
I'm Dwayne Jeffrey. I was a member of the Standards Committee that started this.
Stan Holmes, part of the Colt. I'm a retired Canyon School District teacher. I'm here representing the Utah Sierra Club.
Cindy Davis, I'm visiting, just here to listen and learn.
Cindy,
And new board.
Cindy is a new board member,
Board
right?
member elect.
So welcome. We're happy to have you join us today.
Chris Healy, I'm an academic science coach, K-5, Salt Lake City School District, and I also worked on the standards writing for science, third grade.
Welcome.
Jenny Earl, and I'm Cindy.
We have two of our three board members in our meeting. Welcome. We're happy to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm Lisa Covert. I am a science instructional coach in Alpine School District, and I was a part of the writing team for the physics.
Ricky Scott, I'm here as staff for the Utah State Board of Education. I am the science specialist in teaching.
Angela Stewart. I'm glad I'm not teaching today, but I normally teach in Davis County, and I'm here as representing the science writing.
I'm Ashley Russell, and I am the science specialist of the Alpine School District, and I'm also here for the conversations involving the science standards.
I'm Carrie Young, Coordinator for Digital Teaching and Learning, and I am here for the electronic device policy.
Jeff Fennell, Policy Advisor for the board, I'm here for the full council.
Diana Sutton, Director of Teaching and Learning, I'm here for your first four items.
Forced.
Freudian
And also a couple items in the other committee, so pretty big.
Well, now we know why.
I'm Vince Newmeyer. I also served on the science review committee.
I'm Joyce Kaufman. I am the health specialist for the board, and I'm here for the first two items for health.
I'm Ralph Larson, Substance Abuse Prevention Specialist here at USBE, and then here at
I'm Gina James, and I'm a representative of the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools.
Good morning, Brian Questenberry, legal counsel here.
We got a great Terry Shoemaker's joined us. Welcome, Terry. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And no one said if they wanted to speak to anything in particular, so let me know as we go if you'd like to give
I
them.
think I heard science.
Quite a few science.
Yeah, do it.
All right, so we are beginning our board meeting with an information item, which is an update on the public review for the health standards. And Jody Kaufman, I think, will go ahead and.
It's a crowded room today. I'm Jody Kaufman, and I'm the health specialist, and I'm here just to update everyone on the first 30 days of the 90-day public review for health standards. I was asked to just bring what I had prepared for a schedule, so I guess if you want to pass those, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. On November 1st, the board voted to open up 90-day public review. We have an online survey that so far has over almost 400 comments or responses, not necessarily comments. We have also done 3 of the 6 meetings, which is what I just passed to you. If you look at the sheet that I passed you, I created a QR code, and that goes on. So for the public meetings, I have kind of an agenda that people can pick up, but I put this QR code on that agenda sheet, and people in attendance can use their device and scan, and it will take them directly to the survey. So that way they can leave their written feedback as well as the comments that they're making during the meeting. So we had a meeting in Davis District, 1 in Uinta School District, and 1 in Iron all last week. It was a really fun show. Lots of driving. We survived our drive back from Cedar City in the snowstorm on Thursday, so that was an absolute plus. We came home. So attendance has been about 20 people per meeting so far. The comments have been really different. So kind of both, and Davis had a lot of very similar comments, but then the next day we went to Vernal and their comments were 100% on the opposite.
Really?
The very first comment was exactly opposite of what. So it was really an interesting thing to hear that, and parents in both. We had local board members in Uinta County. So it was really, it's been really interesting to see the variety of comments that we've been getting. We are tape recording, not video recording, but voice recording. So we have a 100% record of everything. And then we've also taken really great notes of all of the meetings. Yes.
Is there any way, how difficult would it be to upload those? Because unfortunately, I don't know that I can get to any of them just based on when they were calendared.
So we
just to listen to them.
I'm sure we can. Let me.
I don't think we would upload them.
Like an MP3. Well, I just need for board members, not for public.
You can totally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I know you are.
But we also have the notes from all of the meeting and all the comments and the notes that are there, but I'm sure that we could also make it so the recordings are available.
But even just
Voice
setting the notes,
recordings.
maybe that would be easier.
Well,
Yes.
sometimes people's interpretation of things is different.
But I'm sure if you, let me look into that.
Well, if it's too much
Yeah.
trouble, I just am curious.
Yeah, they're 2 hours each, but I'm sure
Clean.
that we can.
And
Let me look into that.
Voice recording is just so that we're making sure that we are going back and
And getting
listening
it
and
right.
communicating.
To make sure we didn't miss, it's like 2 people and you can only type so well.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
and you're only required to do 3 meetings.
I believe it's 4.
You're required to do 4 meetings.
It's actually.
Is it 5
the
now? Okay.
Statute requires 3, but the board process requires 5, and we are doing 6.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was somewhere in the middle of all of that. Yes, so we do have 6. The public comment will close on January 30th. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So I'm just curious because I was looking at the calendar this week and knew they were between the holidays, but it's just sandwiched right after Thanksgiving break and the week right before Christmas break. And so I'm concerned about attendance because instead of putting in the first weeks of December, we have them so close to the holidays. I know in Cedar City, a lot of people couldn't come because of snow that day. And so I'm just wondering, we'll see what the next meetings are like, but if, I just am appreciative of the January meeting, but if we needed to do another one just to make sure people could go, just wonder if there'd be any opposition to just floating that idea out there to the board. Just to see, depending on, if we have another series of snowstorms preventing people from showing up to the meetings.
Jody, give us an idea of what kind of response you're getting from people. So you've gotten a lot of online comments. Will you give us an idea of what those comments are, how people are feeling about
there's
this?
definitely been more response to the survey than the physical attendance. I said we've had just under 60 people total between the 3 meetings come, and we have almost 400 responses to the survey. So the survey is definitely the more popular method of responding. I've also gotten emails. I have a folder dedicated in my email box that I'm saving all of those. And my response has just been, thank you so much. The writing team will look at this. It's really been.
Okay, but how are people feeling though?
But, so to answer your question, thank you. It's so mixed. It really is so mixed. There's been a couple really great ones. Someone, and not that they're all great, that was worded so not correctly, but some that have been, for example, there was a misspelled word. Oh, thank you. But that's like, oh, well, duh. And then a few have been really direct at what if you rephrased something, and they give a really specific example.
And do you like those examples, or have they seemed
like the writing team will look at them? I'm one person,
but have they seemed like reasonable?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And some of it's been just really, oh, that really did. And then a lot of questions too. A lot of responses. There's more general comments than there are specific comments, but a lot of the general ones even are things that go, oh, I didn't realize that's how that could be read. Because when you're in a room working on something, you know exactly what it's supposed to say and supposed to mean. And when someone comes into you and says, well, does that mean this? And you're like, oh, no, that's not what that means. So that's been really valuable to hear that feedback from people when it goes to your interpretation, right? Where you were saying how you can interpret things.
Sure. I would prefer, even if we had to keep it open, the I don't know what the timeline requires or is limited by, but I'd rather keep the period open for longer. It's so labor intensive to have these guys drive around to meetings where 10 or 15 people come. So, and given that the response is mostly electronic, I absolutely agree that I want people to be able to. But having 6 meetings scheduled when only 3, maybe more are required, but I think it's just so labor intensive for staff. So I would for that.
Elisa.
I agree with that. I just am concerned with the dates. I've learned a lesson, and from now on, I'll make sure when science comes, we talk about the dates, because I think it was you get less attendance when the Monday after a holiday, you hold a public meeting and expect people to. So, but I had an idea while you were talking, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a bad idea to hold some, and not necessarily for help, but in looking in standards in the future. One here so that we can use the technology that we have to, I love the USBE media channel on YouTube so that reading is one thing, but hearing people is powerful. And I like to hear instead of just reading reports because I can't feel their intonation, you know, the passion, other things behind it. And so, you know, here, if we held at least one hearing in the building in Salt Lake with all of the subjects, we have the technology so that we're broadcasting it to a larger audience and that can be shared, you know, so that people can see, people can comment
We can
on
even
there.
bring in sites. I think it can be a thing where you can show that there are other sites are connected, satellite sites. So I think it's a great idea. But I, just for purposes of this one, I don't want to make you guys drive anymore. It doesn't seem that productive. Not that you don't do that, but I had another question related. So tell me, all of a sudden I'm putting this together. So you get all these comments and then you take them back to the writing group. Is that right?
I'll come present that to you first.
Oh.
But yes, the writing team will look at all of those, all of the comments and make revisions based off of the comments.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny.
I just wanted to say I was going to suggest, I think it is really labor intensive to have another meeting. And so maybe this one, we do have something here and we reach out that way. But I was in attendance at the meeting at the Davis School District. And I just have to say that Jody and Diana were so great to listen to the variety of viewpoints. And I just thought, we are so lucky to have you guys. So thanks so much for just listening so well. And the couple things stood out to me at that meeting. Like, because there's been a lot of pushback with the word demonstrate. And for teachers, I'm just like, what's the problem? But a simple statement of, can you change that to demonstrate understanding? I think there was kind of a feeling like, oh, that's what you really mean. And so that's one of the things that came out of that one. And then when you were talking about perceptions of words and where you had the word vendor, for example, I just think it's so good to get this feedback. And
the word product.
Product. Right, but they assumed it was vendor. Thank you for correcting me on that. But they didn't assume, but to them that meant vendor. So I think, and see, look, it's already stuck with me. I assumed you put vendor. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you and say that even though it was a small group, they had some really important things to say.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Well, since you brought up the idea of terms and terminology, maybe this is a time that we can just segue into our next agenda item, which is the health standards terms. It's another information item so that we can go ahead and get your input on responding to some of the terms that people have had concerns with.
And I will say, in Davis District, it wasn't Davis District, they held the meeting in Davis, but at the first meeting in Davis District, there was a parent that wanted to know the terms, so we were able to tell her, we're talking about those and working on them, which I thought was, it was great timing. Last month at this committee meeting, there was a request to go back and really look at code and see when these words were already in code. So the way I chose to update this for you was underline the changes. That way you can see what was added, like you would in a rule or something. I would, upon, when after the result of this, when this gets published, those wouldn't continue to be underlined. This is just an easy way for you. Some of the words have multiple definitions in code. Abuse, for example, has a lot of different definitions, which was interesting. Some words we were really surprised don't appear anywhere in code. Jeff, our policy advisor, was fabulous, and he
just had to search every term.
Well, yes, we did. So staff, my support staff, Crystal, and I went through all the words and looked, but then Jeff kind of proofread for us and double checked. So we did get another opinion. So this is what we came up with, and if there's any feedback, I'm happy to take it.
Elisa?
So I see that you didn't change the sexual abstinence definition. Is that not defined in code? I thought it was. Really? That's
Same with
surprising.
Child pornography, but not.
So what it means is Utah can teach facts about contraceptives and condoms for the purpose of so you can say the effective rates, how you purchase them. You can never demonstrate them. And you could, so basically you could say that a condom is this % effective at preventing this. They can be purchased at a drugstore, pharmacy, over the counter. A birth control pill has to have a prescription, although that's changed, still a prescription, and you
in the standards that we say, Utah, there's a tenet in Utah that we believe in abstinence
before marriage, fidelity after marriage.
after.
Yes.
Where does
there's-
that show up?
So it's in law, so it's not in the standards because it's not,
It's in 70.
but it would be, so the code for that would be 53G 10-402.
There's-
But the conversation that we've had since some of the comments and feedback started would be, we'll put that definition in the kind of the introduction to the human development in Health 1 and 2, because it's not something that students do. We don't. But it would be the definition for the teachers that we would make it really very clear inside the standard document. They already passed the test for the law and policy test with that in there. It's on the parent consent form already as well. But we would add this to this document and make it very clear in the standards at that point. I believe that's what you were asking me.
Yes, thank you.
And is it accurate to say, Jody, that abstinence-based means that you can provide factual information? So
Yes.
what you were trying to what you were explaining was, we can give them factual information,
And we don't advocate for the use.
but you don't advocate for or against the use. Or I guess you do advocate against, or do you not? I mean, and to use maybe this is a bad example, but you can purchase, an individual can purchase condoms at a pharmacy or a drugstore, but and you could also say, but we know they're not 100% effective, and they're not effective in preventing STDs, but they're also not 100% effective in preventing pregnancy, and we don't recommend it.
What a teacher is trained to say is that the only 100% method of preventing pregnancy and STIs is abstinence.
Okay. But
All
would
other
you-
methods fail to some extent.
So
That's
would
the trained answer.
Would a teacher go on to say, we don't recommend that you use condoms, or we do recommend that you use condoms? No, that would be beyond factual information.
Correct.
And you don't tell them where to purchase them.
So you can say whether it needs a prescription or not.
Okay.
You wouldn't say go to Walgreens.
Yeah.
Because it's my favorite.
But you could say,
brother-in-law there.
but you would say that the hormone devices, birth control pills, patches, IUDs, rings, all require a prescription from a doctor. And the barrier methods do not require a prescription.
Okay.
Okay. But Jackie.
Yeah, I just have a question. Do you also address the, like the hormonal concerns with some of the prescription medications? Do they also go into that so that women know the risks associated with some of these things, or are those?
So
talked about at all?
that's curriculum that's determined at the local level. I have seen a lot of the presentations. So many districts have and charters as well, have a local education agency approved presentation, so like a PowerPoint slideshow, and every teacher would give the exact same slideshow. So a lot
I was
of
just wondering if
a
that
lot of
element
them
was
do
built into
that.
the factual end of it as
And the
well.
ones that I've seen, yes,
Okay.
they include it's kind of like pros and cons. How they word it is theirs. But as far as I don't determine that in this office.
Right. You were just asking about advocacy was the dialogue. So I just wondered if that was also part of that.
The ones I've seen have, yes. Did that answer your question?
Okay, Lisa, to you.
So on abuse, you said that there were a lot of definitions. So is this a compilation of all of those?
This was the
How
one.
did you decide?
This was the one that we've, in looking at the other ones, this is the one that felt like it had the most to do with health education and less to do with domestic violence or things that health wouldn't cover.
Okay.
It seemed like the best fit.
Okay. And sorry, another question. And then on addiction, you don't have any reference to addiction to pornography? Sometimes there's sexual addiction. I know that I don't remember how the code's written now with how we're supposed to address pornography. But aren't we supposed to have the harmful effects, which would be kind of
that's all
they don't talk about addiction.
It just says harmful effects.
Okay.
The compulsive activity or use of a substance, so it could be compulsive activity.
So it could be like
Encompass.
technology, but do you not deal with like addiction to technology?
So okay.
I'm just wondering if we want to broaden that more. But I don't have it. I'm gonna think about it. If we can still.
And I can't remember if the help from the science are blending for me, so I am sorry. But
Like
one of
added
the
behaviors,
addictive
behaviors.
yeah. One of the other ones I had when we were talking about the definition of pornography, which is in the code, but I was concerned that usually our thinking is beyond what is actually technically pornography, and maybe this is from the health or from the science standards. Come on,
I'm
Nick.
sure it's fine.
No.
I think that Ricky would. I think Ricky is really happy that this one falls into mine and not his.
Want to make that quick.
Sorry. I bet you can get it at Walgreens.
This is a very fun edition.
Oh my gosh. Never mind. Maybe I will think about this. We will work on this later. It doesn't embarrass me anymore, but
Janet, can I ask another question?
Yes.
I'm just curious, what other definitions that you were surprised weren't in code? I'm guessing sexual abstinence was one you were surprised. Although I think some people think that it's in code based on the fidelity that
Absence for marriage, fidelity after marriage.
No abstinence means.
Right.
it's in code.
What about what are some of the other definitions that if you can think of them, I'm just curious to see if there's something we need to recommend. If it's sometimes when things aren't defined, but it's in some of the legislators believe it is, and then we interpret it differently. Then we can make
Pornography in the sense
recommendations.
that There was no pornography means these types of things. It was more pornography in relation to an act. So it became difficult to find anything in code that would be really relevant.
I feel like there was a section code. I'm just failing to remember where it is. So I could look it up, but it talked about implicit behavior, explicit behavior, and then there was a pornography. But it feels like it said pornography is, this section of code, this section of this section, if I remember right. But I'd have to go back and find it, and I quick search.
you mean you said that, and you said it's that way in the code, you believe, or?
So that's the only one that
There's
was found is
this,
the
but
child.
Right, but that's child pornography, and
Well,
the one
but
I saw
then-
wasn't specific. to child.
Yeah.
But I'll try to find it and.
There's a section
I'd
about
like to ask you, Jody, because I've had some emails here that people have emailed me some of their concerns, and I'd just like you to talk about this for a minute. One of the things that people are concerned about or have expressed concern about is that in the standards, we talk about a trusted adult. And there are people who say, why don't you just say parent? Because parents should be, the ones beyond. Do you want to explain your rationale behind the usage of the term trusted adult?
So a trusted adult absolutely could include their parents, and in many cases it will. But the writing committee, who does work with child protective, some of the members on the writing committee work with child protective services, DCFS, things like that. And they felt very strongly that to let a child decide who their trusted adult was, and that was the reasoning for it. I don't have an answer on defining or not, but that was the original reason why it was trusted adult. That was the original reason, is to allow a child to decide who to trust and not tell them, trust your parents, trust your teacher, or trust police officers. Because in each of those cases, there are times when those people aren't trusted, unfortunately.
At least.
And I understand all of that because that's usually the minority situation. And so there's a lot of research showing that strong families help, do things. And so I'm a little concerned that there's no mention anywhere of families in this when we're, especially when our code talks about abstinence. Well, it's not the definition, but the fidelity before and after marriage, which creates families, and the fact that we aren't even talking about family anywhere is concerning. And we can get into that when we get the preview, the 90 days back. But that's something I'd like to see addressed.
Do you have any suggestion for how?
Yeah,
you
well,
would-
that's why I'm saying we'll talk about it after the 90 days, because I'd like to see how other people, I know that that's a concern I've heard people say.
I think we need to have a very inclusive definition of family.
Yeah.
That's what I would feel strongly about. If we do include families, it's got to be beyond the traditional family model for me to be included. So I just was asking what it might look like.
Right, well, I don't know, and that's why I'm hesitant to even really define it, just talk about families.
Well, I'm thinking, and I'm concerned that, well, I guess it's possible, but I don't want to create more problems or have more concerns from folks by defining it as broader than some
No,
people
I
would
know,
have it
that's
defined.
an issue that I've been concerned about as well, with same thing with marriage, that opens up another can of worms with.
Just do the Princess Bride.
Marriage.
Marriage.
How to spell it is an issue.
I know it is, it's a problem.
Brings us together. Never mind. I already said
I'd
that.
like to see what people say, and then.
Okay. Was there anyone in the audience who wanted Is there anyone who wants to give input? All right, so, Deputy Superintendent Norman has suggested that we might want to, and I think, Elise, you're thinking along these lines of revamping the way we do standards, right? And her suggestion is that amongst the meetings that we do for standards, that we include one here at USBE to be broadcast. I'll make that as a motion. And then let's go ahead and, is there discussion to that? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and Ricky, will you add that?
Yeah, so I'm still, I have, we heard several suggestions, but nothing is finalized. So Cedar or Washington, Richfield. Was that just specifically to that Salt Lake discussion, or is that to all locations?
No, that is just whenever we are working on standards, we would ask those staff members to be
I just
aware
wanted to
that we'd like to include one location at USBE that it could be broadcast.
And I think my feeling is, you take those suggestions as suggestions, and if you think Richfield is better than Cedar, then do that. I'm one who's sort of reluctant to go. I mean, 6 meetings, including one at the USOE, is not, it's a lot to ask for staff, but I think it's maybe doable. But I would never suggest you go beyond that, and ever. And broadcast as many things as you can, and in as many ways as you can. But I think we have to be somewhat, we don't, even if it were a personal cost to you folks, it's a financial.
Did this. I mean, we had a lot of online response.
Online.
It was a huge.
And you have maybe 50 total people attend.
Not really. We had a
Oh, no,
lot.
they
of
have
lots and lots
Oh,
of people.
good
Yeah,
to know.
we had 50 just in Washington.
Oh, that's,
And we had
that's good to
close
know.
to 50 in Vernal as well. We had a
Wow.
big turnout and a
Good.
lot of. One in Salt Lake and Provo had over 100. So
then never mind. I think that's a really, that means that there is that interest, and I think it's more.
Right, that's why I feel like the health standards, the holidays was a problem. And so I'm curious to see what it's gonna look like in December. Because it's the week before Christmas, and the last thing you wanna do is go sit in a public meeting. Nobody wants to care about this
I think the
between two
problem-
holidays.
I think the problem is if I don't, Diana maybe correct me, but if I remember right, one of the statutes specifically say that these public hearings need to be in the first 30 days.
Oh, we have to look into that.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. And so because of that, if we approve 90-day review on a certain time, then we have a pretty small window to fit them in. And again, I might be incorrect, but I remember hearing that at one.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
That's another, thank you for reminding me, because that's the other issue I have. If this gets passed out in January for public review, then we're butting up to the legislative session, and it's again another space where people are preoccupied elsewhere, and so there we would probably want to put them in January or after.
Okay, so could we ask staff to please look into
Jeff
that timeline and see if, is there a restriction?
It only requires 90 days.
So we have a 90-day window.
We can spread them out.
Anytime?
And that gives me all, I mean, if we approve this in full board in January, we have all the way until April. I remember last time we got feedback from Washington because of a quick turnaround as well with the timing, that they
Right,
felt
no
that there
one
was
knew
only
about
2
it.
weeks to prepare or maybe even less. And so, I mean, if we were to start scheduling these for later in the spring, I think for my driving purposes, I'd really appreciate it right now in spring.
Sure.
So as opposed to.
Especially the longer the distance, it's pretty, you can't really count on anything in Utah. You can't until.
All right, so let's go to Jen.
I'm just wondering, was she making a motion to